The great hall of the Galactic Council buzzed with its usual noise. Hundreds of alien voices mixed together in a sound that hurt human ears. Ambassador Hyunwoo Kim stood at the speaking platform, waiting for silence. He had done this many times before, but today felt different. The Velkari delegates whispered among themselves, their blue skin glowing brighter when they got excited. The tall, thin Zephyrians stood like living crystal statues, barely moving at all. Near the back, the blob-like Gornathi rolled and shifted in their special containers filled with thick, green liquid. Hyunwoo cleared his throat. The sound echoed through his translator device, and slowly the hall grew quiet. He looked down at his notes one last time, then set them aside. He had practiced this speech for weeks, but now he wanted to speak from his heart. Honored members of the Galactic Council, he began, his voice calm and steady. For 200 years, humanity has been proud to serve alongside you. We have shared in your victories and your struggles. We have tried to be good neighbors and trusted partners. Some of the aliens nodded. Others seemed bored. The Velkari representative, Thex Moran, was already looking at his data pad, probably reading trade reports. Today, I come before you to announce that humanity will be leaving the Council territories, Hyunwoo continued. This decision was not made in anger or haste. We simply believe it is time for us to find our own path among the stars. Now he had their attention. A few delegates sat up straighter. Thex Moran finally looked up from his pad. We will honor all existing contracts and agreements until their natural end, Hyunwoo said, but we will not be renewing them. Human ships will begin leaving Council space within the next 72 hours. The hall erupted in noise. Some aliens seemed shocked, others confused. Many just looked annoyed, as if humanity was causing unnecessary trouble. Council Chairman Torval, a massive creature with 6 arms and skin like tree bark, raised one hand for quiet. Ambassador Kim, surely this is some kind of negotiation tactic. What do you want from us? Hyunwoo shook his head. We want nothing, Chairman. We are simply leaving. But why? Asked Senator Vixella from the Centauri delegation. Has someone wronged humanity? Are you not being paid enough for your services? No one has wronged us, Hyunwoo replied, and payment has never been our main concern. We leave because we have different ideas about how civilizations should work together. Thex Moran stood up, his voice carrying easily through the hall. This is typical human drama. They will be back within a year, asking for help with some crisis or another. Several aliens made sounds that might have been laughter. Hyunwoo did not respond to the insult. He simply bowed, a gesture of respect his people had maintained for centuries. Thank you for listening, he said. May the stars guide you well. As he walked away from the platform, Hyunwoo heard the buzz of conversation start up again behind him. Most of the talk seemed to be about trade agreements and shipping schedules. Very few seemed to care that an entire species was leaving their alliance. In the corridors outside the main hall, So-Young Park was waiting with her tablet and a sad smile. She had been the human trade coordinator for 15 years, managing shipping routes across half the galaxy. How did it go? She asked as they walked toward the human embassy offices. About as expected, Hyunwoo said. Most of them think we are bluffing. So-Young nodded. She had been preparing for this day for months, quietly transferring control of various systems to alien replacements. It was harder than she had thought it would be. Many of the aliens had no idea how complex some of the human-managed systems really were. The Andorian medical network is going to have problems, she said. Their new coordinator thinks he can handle it, but he has never dealt with cross-species disease control. Not our problem anymore, Hyunwoo reminded her, though his voice was gentle. In the embassy offices, dozens of human workers were packing up their belongings. Computer files were being transferred or deleted. Personal items went into boxes marked for shipping. The walls, once covered with pictures showing successful human-alien cooperation projects, were now bare. Min-Ho Lee arrived at the embassy that evening. As captain of the cargo ship Perseverance, he would be responsible for moving many of the human families from the outer colonies. His ship was just one of thousands that would take part in the Great Exodus. Everything ready, Captain? Hyunwoo asked. Minho nodded. The fleet is gathering at the edge of Council space. We should be able to complete the evacuation in 6 months, maybe less. And the destination? The advanced scouts have confirmed it. The Magellanic Clouds have several systems that will work well for human colonies. It will take us 18 months to get there, but we will have room to grow. That night, Hyunwoo stood on the observation deck of the embassy, looking out at the great city that surrounded the council buildings. Millions of aliens from hundreds of species lived and worked here. For 2 centuries, humans had been part of this vast community. He thought about all the problems his people had helped solve, the trade wars they had prevented, the diseases they had cured, the diplomatic crises they had resolved, the engineering projects they had completed. Most of the aliens had no idea how much humans had contributed. They saw humans as just another species, useful for certain jobs but not particularly special. They had no idea that humans had quietly become the glue holding much of their civilization together. Maybe they would figure it out after humans were gone. Or maybe they would just find other ways to handle their problems. Either way, it would not be humanity's concern. The first human ships left Council space the next morning. There were no farewell ceremonies, no speeches, no protests. Most aliens barely noticed the departure. Those who did notice assumed it was just routine ship movement. Over the next 3 days, the exodus continued. Family ships, cargo vessels, research stations, military escorts, all moving quietly toward the edge of known space. The great human adventure in galactic civilization was ending, not with anger or violence, but with the same calm dignity that had marked humanity's 2-century participation in the Council. As the last human transport cleared the border, So Young sent a final message to the Council's central computer. It was simple and polite. Human withdrawal from Council territories complete. All systems transferred to designated replacements. Thank you for 2 centuries of cooperation. The message was filed automatically in the Council's vast database. Most members never saw it. Those who did see it filed it away without much thought. After all, humans were just one species among hundreds. How much difference could their absence really make? 3 weeks had passed since the last human ship disappeared from Council space. Most aliens had already forgotten about the departure. Trade continued. Ships moved between systems, and the great machinery of galactic civilization kept turning. Then, the emergency alert came through. Council Emergency Coordinator Velthar was having his morning meal when his communication device started flashing red. Red meant Crisis Level 7, the kind of emergency that could kill millions if not handled quickly. The message was from the Andorian sector. Dr. Keximoto, the chief medical officer for the mining world Kepler 442b, was calling for immediate help. His voice was shaking when the connection opened. Coordinator Velthar, we have a plague outbreak. It started small, just a few dozen miners getting sick. But now it is spreading faster than we can track it. We have over 10,000 cases and the number is growing every hour. Velthar's 4 eyes focused on the screen. Plague outbreaks were serious, but not unusual. The Council had dealt with dozens of them over the years. What is the cause, Doctor? Unknown. The disease affects both carbon and silicon-based life forms. It is like nothing we have seen before. Our medical computers cannot identify it. This was more serious. Most diseases only affected one type of biology. Something that could jump between carbon and silicon-based species was extremely rare and dangerous. I am sending your data to the Council's medical response team, Velthar said. They will have treatments ready within hours. But when Velthar tried to contact the medical response team, he discovered a problem. The team leader was Dr. Sarah Chen, a human who had left 3 weeks ago. Her replacement was Dr. Gulvaran from the Medicae Guild of Altair. Dr. Gulvaran was an expert in silicon-based diseases, but he had never worked with carbon-based life forms. When Velthar explained the situation, the doctor's crystalline face showed confusion. I can provide treatment for any silicon-based beings affected by this plague, Dr. Gulvaran said. But I know nothing about carbon-based biology. You will need to find someone else for those patients. Velthar tried the healing circles of Vega. They were good with carbon-based diseases, But their representative, Master Zenthari, had bad news. "We can help," the healer said, "but our treatments require a full year-long ritual cycle. Each patient must be prepared through meditation and energy alignment before healing can begin." "A year?" Belthar could not hide his shock. "Doctor, people are dying right now. We need treatment in days, not years." "I understand your urgency," Master Zenthari replied, "but rushing the healing process will only make things worse. Our methods have worked for thousands of years." While Belthar searched for other options, the plague continued to spread. It jumped from Kepler 442b to a nearby space station, then to 3 more planets. The death count reached 100,000, then 200,000. On the human colony, Ship New Sol, Ji-hoon Choi was monitoring the Council's emergency broadcasts. His wife Yoonji found him in their small quarters, staring at the communication screen with a sad expression. "The plague in Andorian sector is getting worse," he told her. "They cannot figure out how to treat it." Yoonji sat down beside him. She remembered Dr. Chen, who had been their neighbor on the Council station. The human doctor had always been working on some new treatment, always ready to help with any medical crisis. "Should we tell them about Dr. Chen's research?" Yoonji asked. "She was working on universal medical protocols before we left. Maybe her notes could help." Ji-hoon shook his head slowly. "We are not part of their system anymore. They made it clear that they did not value our contributions. Now they have to solve their own problems." "But people are dying." "People die every day in the galaxy," Ji-hoon said. "We cannot save everyone, especially those who do not want our help." The plague was not the only problem emerging in the wake of humanity's departure. The Spiral Arm commercial network, which handled shipping for dozens of star systems, was starting to fall apart. Na Young. Song had been the primary logistics coordinator for the network. She had known every trade route, every seasonal variation in supply and demand, every cultural restriction that affected what could be shipped where and when. Her replacement was Trader Vex Callan from the Merchant Guild of Rigel. He was an experienced businessman, but he had never managed anything as complex as the Spiral Arm network. The first problem showed up in the Tau Ceti system. A shipment of Terran vegetables arrived at the spaceport, but nobody had remembered that the local aliens were in the middle of their religious fasting period. Eating imported food during the fast was forbidden by their culture. The vegetables rotted in storage while the shipping company and the local authorities argued about who was responsible for the mistake. Similar problems began appearing across the network. Food arrived at the wrong times. Medical supplies went to planets that did not need them, and raw materials piled up in warehouses while factories waited for deliveries. Vexcalan worked 18-hour days trying to fix the problems, but each solution seemed to create 2 new issues. He had never realized how many small details Na Young had managed. Things like knowing that Planet X needed extra cooling units during their summer season, or that Species Y could not eat food that had been stored near certain metals. How did the human female keep track of all this, he asked his assistant after reviewing another shipping disaster. She had been doing it for 20 years, the assistant replied. She said she knew every trade route in the network by heart. Within a month of the plague outbreak, food shortages began appearing in the outer colonies. Ships carrying grain got lost because their navigation computers had been programmed by human technicians who were no longer available to fix bugs. Medical supplies expired in storage because nobody knew the proper rotation schedules that Dr. Chen and her team had established. The Council's emergency sessions became daily events. Each day brought news of new problems. Systems that had worked perfectly for decades were suddenly failing. Trade routes that had been profitable for generations were losing money. Council Chairman Torval found himself working longer hours than he had in years. His staff presented him with crisis reports every morning. Medical emergencies, shipping failures, communication breakdowns. The list grew longer each day. "What is happening to us?" he asked his chief advisor during one late-night meeting. "These are all routine problems. We have handled them 1,000 times before." The advisor, a wise old Zephyrian named Crystal Song of Evening, made a sound like wind chimes. Perhaps they were only routine because certain people made them routine. Now those people are gone. Torvald did not want to think about what that meant. Humans had been part of Council civilization for 2 centuries, but they were just one species among hundreds. They could not have been that important. Could they? On the mining world where the plague had started, Dr. Keximoto watched another patient die. The total death count was now over 500,000 and still growing. The treatments from the Medici Guild worked on silicon-based patients, but only about half the time. The healing circles of Vega were still preparing their year-long ritual. In his desperation, Dr. Keximoto accessed the old medical files that Dr. Chen had left behind. Her research notes mentioned something called adaptive treatment protocols, methods for quickly developing treatments that could work across multiple species types. But the notes were incomplete. Dr. Chen had taken her full research with her when humanity left. What remained was just enough to show how much the Council had lost, but not enough to save the people who were dying. As night fell on the plague world, Dr. Keximoto made a decision that would have been unthinkable a month earlier. He sent a message toward the edge of the galaxy, hoping to reach the human fleet before it was too late. The message was simple. Please help us. It would take weeks for the signal to reach the human ships, if it reached them at all. By then, how many more would be dead? 2 months after humanity's departure, the Galactic Council faced its worst diplomatic crisis in 50 years. The hegemony of Tau Ceti and the democratic worlds of Proxima Centauri were preparing for war. The dispute seemed simple enough. Both groups claimed mining rights to an asteroid field that floated in the space between their territories. The asteroids contained rare metals needed for faster-than-light engines. Both sides said they had found the asteroids first. Senior Counselor Rextai of the Velkari Empire had volunteered to mediate the dispute. The Velkari were known for their strict honor codes and their skill in combat. Rextai was confident he could solve the problem quickly. He called a meeting with representatives from both sides. From Tau Ceti came General Carthen, a warrior, with scars covering his green skin. From Proxima Centauri came diplomat Feyera, a small woman with pale blue skin and large dark eyes. This dispute is simple, Rextai announced. Both sides claim the same territory. In Velkari tradition, such matters are settled by ritual combat. Each side will choose a champion. The winner's people get the mining rights. General Carthen smiled, showing rows of sharp teeth. Excellent, my champion will crush anyone the Proximans can field. But diplomat Feyara looked shocked. Combat? You want us to fight a war to settle this? Not a war, Rextai explained. Single combat. One fighter from each side. Clean and honorable. The democratic worlds do not settle disputes through violence, Feyara said firmly. We believe in negotiation and compromise. Surely we can find a peaceful solution. Rextai's blue skin darkened with frustration. There is no compromise here. Either your people mine the asteroids or his people do. Combat will decide who is more worthy. Are you saying we have no choice but to fight? General Carthen asked. His hand moved toward the weapon at his belt. If the Proximans refuse honorable combat, then they are cowards who do not deserve the mining rights, Rextai declared. Diplomat Feyara stood up quickly. If the Tau Cetians insist on violence, then we will defend ourselves with our full military might. General Carthen also stood, his weapon now in his hand. The hegemony accepts your challenge. Both representatives stormed out of the meeting, leaving Rextai confused and angry. He had been sure that his solution was perfect. Combat was how. The Velkari settled all their disputes. Why would other species not see the wisdom in this approach? Within hours, both sides had called up their military fleets. Tau Ceti warships moved toward the disputed asteroid field. Proxima Centauri defense forces scrambled to meet them. What should have been a simple mediation had become the start of an interstellar war. On the human generation ship Harmony, former diplomatic attaché Gitai Wang was monitoring council communications with his daughter Yu Jin. She was studying xenopolitics at the ship's university and was fascinated by the crisis. They used ritual combat as a solution? Yu Jin asked in disbelief. Did they learn nothing from the Andromedan trade wars? Gite shook his head sadly. Your grandmother always said that each species sees the universe through their own eyes. The Velkari think combat solves everything, because that is how their society works. But humans would never have suggested combat for a mining dispute, Yujin said. No, we would have looked for a third option. Maybe splitting the mining rights, or having both sides work together, or finding alternative sources for the rare metals. But humans are not there anymore. Yujin studied the tactical displays showing fleet movements near the asteroid field. They are making every mistake we warned them about in the diplomatic training programs. They will learn, her father said, quietly, or they will not. The war that erupted was swift and brutal. Tau Ceti forces were better equipped, but Proxima Centauri had more ships. The first battle destroyed half the disputed asteroid field, making the entire conflict pointless. But by then, pride and anger had taken over. Each side blamed the other for the destruction. Each side demanded payment for their losses. The fighting spread to 12 star systems as allies joined the conflict. Trade routes that had operated peacefully for decades became battlegrounds. Refugee ships fled the war zones, creating humanitarian crises on dozens of worlds. The Council's peacekeeping forces were too small and too slow to stop the spreading violence. Meanwhile, other problems continued to grow worse. The plague that had started in the Andorian sector had now spread to 47 worlds. The death count was approaching 10 million. No effective treatment had been found. The Spiral Arm commercial network had collapsed completely. Food shortages affected over 100 colonies. Medical supplies were stuck in warehouses while sick people died waiting for deliveries. On Earth's moon, the last human research station was powering down. Dr. Jae-Sung Park and his small team were the final humans to leave Council territory. They had stayed behind to finish an important project, a breakthrough in faster-than-light communication technology. The new system would have allowed instant communication across the entire galaxy. No more waiting weeks for messages to travel between star systems. Crisis coordination would be immediate. Trade negotiations could happen in real time. Dr. Park looked at the completed prototype one last time before shutting it down. 5 more years, he told his assistant. We needed just 5 more years to finish testing. The Council said it was interesting but not essential, the assistant reminded him. Yes, they did. Dr. Park began the shutdown sequence. The revolutionary communication system powered down, its potential forever lost. Not essential until they needed it. As their shuttle left the moon, Dr. Park uploaded the project files to an automated beacon. Maybe someday when the Council realized what they had lost, someone would find the research and finish the work. But that would be years in the future, if ever. For now, the galaxy would have to struggle with communication delays that added days, or weeks to every crisis response. Back on the Council's central world, Chairman Torval was facing a revolt among the member species. The Andorian colonies were threatening to leave the Council if no cure was found for the plague. The Centauri Trade Alliance was demanding military protection for their shipping routes. The Outer Rim territories wanted emergency food aid. We need solutions, Torval announced at the Emergency Council session. Our civilization is falling apart. Council member Zixandra from the Silicon Confederacy had been studying the crisis reports for weeks. She was one of the few aliens who had worked closely with humans and understood their methods. Chairman, she said carefully, I have been reviewing all of our current problems. The medical crisis, the shipping failures, the communication breakdowns, the diplomatic disasters. Yes, what about them? Zixandra's crystalline form flickered with nervous energy. Every single one of these problems has happened in an area where humans used to work. Every single one would have been prevented if the humans were still here. The council chamber fell silent. Torval's bark-like skin rippled as he considered this statement. That cannot be correct. Senior Counselor Rextai objected. Humans were just one species among hundreds. They were not that important. Were they not? Zixandra challenged. How many medical crises did we have when Dr. Chen's team was managing the response networks? How many shipping failures occurred when Nayang Song was coordinating the trade routes? How many diplomatic wars started when human mediators were available? The answers hung in the air, unspoken but clear. For 2 centuries, humans had been quietly preventing the exact disasters that were now destroying Council civilization. Thex Moran, who had laughed at humanity's departure, spoke in a voice barely above a whisper. They were not just participants. They were the system that held everything together. As if to emphasize the point, another emergency alert came through. The Zephyrian Collective's mining operations were shutting down due to cascading equipment failures. The automated systems that human engineers had designed and maintained for decades were breaking down without regular maintenance. The Collective's representative, Crystal Voice of Storms, stood to address the Council. We have lost 30% of our mining capacity in the past month. Our engineering teams cannot understand the human-designed control systems. More alerts followed. The Gornathi transport network was collapsing. The Altarian medical research stations were offline. The Vegan agricultural systems were producing crop failures. Every system that humans had touched, every problem they had solved, every crisis they had prevented, all of it was falling apart at the same time. In his private chambers that night, Chairman Torval stared out at the city lights and wondered if galactic civilization would survive the next year. The humans had tried to warn the Council about these interdependencies, but nobody had listened. Now it was too late to listen. The humans were gone, and the galaxy was learning what it meant to stand without them. 6 months had passed since humanity's quiet departure, and the Galactic Council was drowning in crisis after crisis. What had started as isolated problems had grown into a complete system failure that threatened the very foundations of galactic civilization. Chairman Torval stood before the emergency assembly, his 6 arms gesturing at the massive display screen behind him. Red warning lights covered almost half the galaxy's territory. Each light represented a major crisis that the Council could not solve. "The situation is worse than we feared," Torval announced to the packed chamber. "We now have 43 active military conflicts, 17 separate plague outbreaks, critical shortages of food and medical supplies across 200 worlds, and the complete breakdown of our interstellar communication network." The numbers were staggering, but it was Council member Zixandra who spoke the truth that everyone feared to hear. Her crystalline form glowed brighter as she stood to address the assembly. "Honored members," she said, her voice carrying clearly through the translation systems. "I have spent months analyzing these crises. I have studied the patterns, the locations, the types of failures we are seeing. And I must tell you something that will be difficult to accept." The chamber grew silent. Even the constant buzz of alien conversation stopped. "Every single one of these disasters would have been preventable if the humans were still here," Zixandra continued. "Not some of them, not most of them, all of them." The reaction was immediate. Some delegates shouted in anger, others made sounds of disbelief. Senior Counselor Rextai stood up, his blue skin dark with rage. "That is impossible," he declared. "Humans were just one species. They could not have been that important." But Zixandra had prepared for this response. She activated a series of holographic displays that filled the air above the assembly. Each display showed a different crisis, with data flowing in streams of light. "Look at the medical crisis in the Andorian sector," she said. "The plague began 3 weeks after Dr. Chen and her medical response team departed. For 50 years, her team prevented exactly this type of cross-species contamination. They monitored potential disease outbreaks and stopped them before they could spread." The display showed Dr. Chen's old reports, hundreds of potential plague outbreaks that had been stopped before they started. Most council members had never seen these reports. The work had been done so quietly that nobody noticed. "The shipping network collapse," Zixandra continued. "Ne Young Song managed trade routes for 20 star systems. She knew every cultural restriction, every seasonal variation, every supply chain dependency. Without her knowledge, the entire network fell apart in weeks." Another display showed the complex web of trade relationships that Na Young had maintained. It looked like a living organism, with thousands of connections between worlds. When the human connections were removed, the whole system died. The diplomatic failures, the communication breakdowns, the infrastructure collapses. Every single crisis has the same pattern. Humans were quietly managing critical systems across the galaxy. When they left, everything they were maintaining began to fail. The evidence was overwhelming. For 2 centuries, humans had been the invisible foundation that supported galactic civilization. They were not just participants, they were the immune system that prevented disasters and the maintenance crew that kept everything running. Counselor Moldena from the Outer Rim territories spoke next, her voice shaking with emotion. How did we not know this? How could we miss something so important? Zixandra's display shifted to show employment records and work assignments. Because humans never demanded recognition. They did not ask for special titles or extra payment. They simply did the work that needed to be done. They saw problems and fixed them before anyone else even noticed the problems existed. They tried to tell us, added Crystal Voice of Storms from the Zephyrian Collective. I remember now. Humans gave presentations about system dependencies and interconnection risks. We ignored them because the information seemed too complex and theoretical. The terrible truth was becoming clear. Humans had not just been helpful members of the Council, they had been essential. Their unique combination of creativity, empathy, and analytical thinking had made them natural problem solvers. While other species focused on their own specialized areas, humans had seen the big picture and worked to keep everything connected. On the human fleet, now traveling through the void between galaxies, Insu Kim was monitoring the Council's emergency transmissions. As the fleet's communication specialist, he kept track of what was happening in the galaxy they had left behind. His wife, Su Jin, found him in the communication center reading the latest crisis reports. She had been a logistics coordinator for the Centauri Trade Alliance before the Exodus. How bad is it, she asked, though she could see the answer in her husband's expression. Worse than we predicted, Insu replied. The medical networks have collapsed completely. Food distribution is failing across dozens of systems. The war between Tau Ceti and Proxima Centauri has spread to their entire regional alliance. Su Jin sat down beside him. Should we help them? Insu was quiet for a long moment. They both remembered the council meetings where humans had tried to explain the importance of system redundancy and crisis prevention. Most aliens had seemed bored by the presentations. Some had even suggested that humans were being too cautious. The Colonial Council has already decided, Insu said finally. We continue toward the Magellanic Clouds. What happens in the Milky Way is no longer our responsibility. Meanwhile, the crisis in the galaxy continued to worsen. The Velkari Empire, once one of the most stable powers in the Council, was tearing itself apart. Without human mediators to resolve internal disputes, ancient clan rivalries had exploded into civil war. The Zephyrian Collective's mining operations were shutting down one by one. Their automated systems had been designed by human engineers who understood both Zephyrian technology and the needs of other species. Now that the humans were gone, nobody could maintain the complex integration systems. On the plague worlds, the death toll had reached 25 million. The Medici Guild of Altair had finally developed a treatment that worked for silicon-based life forms, but it was useless for carbon-based species. The healing circles of Vega were still preparing their year-long ritual, which would be ready, just in time to help the survivors bury the dead. Dr. Kexmoto on Kepler 442b had received no response to his desperate message to the human fleet. He did not know that the message had actually reached them, but the humans had decided they could not help without becoming responsible for the entire Council's medical system again. Communication delays that had once seemed like minor inconveniences were now killing people. Emergency requests took weeks to reach the right authorities. By the time help arrived, the crises had usually grown much worse. The fast communication system that Dr. Park had been developing on Earth's moon could have solved this problem. But the research files were locked in automated storage, waiting for someone with the right access codes. Dr. Park was now 18 months away from the galaxy, and the codes had died with him. At the Council's emergency headquarters, crisis management teams worked around the clock trying to coordinate responses. But without the human-designed coordination protocols, their efforts were chaotic and often made problems worse. We need more ships at the Andorian medical crisis, announced Coordinator Velthar during one planning session. But if we send ships there, we cannot supply food to the Outer Rim colonies, replied his assistant. Then people will starve in the Outer Rim while people die of plague in Andorian space, Velthar said grimly. We do not have enough resources to handle both crises. This was exactly the kind of resource allocation problem that humans had solved routinely. They had maintained detailed models of resource flows across the galaxy, constantly adjusting supply chains to prevent shortages before they became critical. But those models had been in human heads and human computers. When the humans left, the knowledge went with them. As news of the galactic crisis spread, some council members began to panic. The Gornuthi Collective announced they were withdrawing from several systems to protect their core territories. The Altarian Federation started hoarding medical supplies. The Outer Rim territories threatened to declare independence if they did not receive immediate aid. The Great Alliance that had maintained peace and prosperity for centuries was falling apart. Fear and desperation were replacing cooperation and trust. In the council's main chamber, Chairman Torval faced a room full of angry and frightened representatives. Some blamed him for the crisis. Others demanded immediate action to bring the humans back. We must send a delegation to find the human fleet, declared Senator Vixella. We must ask them to return and help us. And what can we offer them? Asked Rextai bitterly. They tried to work with us for 2 centuries. We ignored their warnings and dismissed their contributions. Why would they come back to save us now? The question hung in the air like a poison cloud. Everyone knew the answer, but nobody wanted to say it out loud. The humans had no reason to return. The galaxy had made it clear that it did not value their partnership. Now the galaxy would have to face the consequences of that choice. 1 year after humanity's departure, the Galactic Council made its most desperate decision in 500 years. They would send a delegation to the edge of known space, racing to catch the human fleet before it disappeared forever into the void between galaxies. Council Vice Chair Maldena led the mission. She commanded a fast cruiser with authority to offer humanity anything they wanted: complete autonomy, unlimited resources, seats on the Council's ruling committee. The galaxy was dying, and everyone knew that only humans could save it. The journey took 3 weeks, pushing their ship's engines beyond safe limits. Behind them, the galaxy continued to collapse. The death toll from plagues had reached 50 million. The war between Tau Ceti and Proxima Centauri had expanded into a conflict involving 30 star systems. Food shortages affected over 300 worlds. As their ship approached the galactic edge, Maldena reviewed the intelligence reports about humanity's exodus. The human fleet had established a final way station at the edge of Council space, a small station where they were making final preparations for their journey to the Magellanic Clouds. There, said the ship's navigator, pointing to a dot of light on the scanner. That is the human station. The way station was smaller than Maldena had expected. Just a simple construction platform with docking bays for maybe 50 ships. Around it, the human fleet was gathering. Thousands of vessels of every size and type. Colony ships, cargo haulers, research vessels, and the great generation ships that would carry humanity to their new home. Maldena's communication officer established contact with the station. The response came quickly in perfect galactic standard. Council vessel, you are welcome to dock at Bay 7. Speaker Do-Hyun Lee will meet with your delegation in 1 hour. Do-Hyun Lee. Maldena remembered him from the council chambers, a quiet man who had served as humanity's backup ambassador for many years. He had always seemed calm and reasonable, the kind of person who might listen to a desperate plea for help. The docking bay was clean and efficient, like everything humans built. A small group of humans waited to greet the council delegation. Do-Hyun Lee stepped forward, bowing slightly in the old human custom. Vice Chair Maldena, he said politely. Welcome to Waystation Hope. I understand you wish to speak with humanity's leadership. Speaker Lee, Maldena replied, trying to keep her voice steady. We come with an urgent request from the Galactic Council. Do-Hyun nodded. Please follow me to the conference room. As they walked through the station's corridors, Maldena noticed that everything was being packed up. Humans moved efficiently, through the halls carrying equipment and supplies to the waiting ships. Children played in designated areas while their parents worked. Everyone seemed calm and focused, as if they were simply moving to a new home rather than fleeing a collapsing civilization. The conference room was simple but comfortable. Do-Hyun offered refreshments, which Maldena declined. Her stomach was too tight with worry to think about food. "Speaker Lee," she began, "the galaxy is in crisis. Since humanity's departure, we have faced disasters that we cannot solve. Plagues, wars, system failures, everything is falling apart." Do-Hyun listened without interruption. His expression remained polite but neutral. "We understand now that humanity was more important to galactic civilization than we realized," Maldena continued. "We were wrong to take your contributions for granted. We are here to ask, no, to beg humanity to return." She activated a holographic projector and showed him the full scope of the crisis. Death counts in the tens of millions. Economic collapse across hundreds of systems. Wars that were spreading faster than anyone could stop them. "We are prepared to offer humanity anything you want," Maldena said desperately. "Complete autonomy for human space. Guaranteed resources for 1,000 years. Seats on the Council's inner circle with veto power over all major decisions. Name your price." Do-Hyun studied the crisis data for several minutes. When he finally spoke, his voice was gentle but firm. "Vice Chair Maldena, I appreciate that you have come all this way. I understand that your people are suffering. But I must give you humanity's answer." He stood and walked to the window, looking out at the human fleet that was preparing for its final journey. "For 2 centuries, we tried to build something sustainable with you. We saw the problems coming and tried to warn you. We showed you the data about system dependencies and interconnection risks. We offered to train your people in crisis prevention and management." Maldena felt her hope beginning to fade. "We know we made mistakes. You called us alarmist," Do-Hyun continued. "You said our warnings were too theoretical. You relegated us to support roles and ignored our advice. When we tried to explain how complex systems work, you seemed bored. We understand better now," Maldena said. "We know how valuable humanity was to the galaxy." Do-Hyun turned back to face her. "Do you? Or do you just know that you need us to fix your problems?" Before Maldena could answer, an alert chimed through the station's communication system. Zubin Park, the fleet's chief navigator, was calling all ships to prepare for departure. "The Magellanic Clouds are waiting," Do-Hyun explained. "Our long-range scouts have found suitable worlds for human colonies. In 18 months, we will begin building something new." "But the galaxy needs you," Maldena pleaded. "Billions of people will die without human help." "Billions of people are dying right now," Do-Hyun replied sadly. "They have been dying for centuries from problems that the Council could have prevented. Wars that human mediators might have stopped. Diseases that human doctors could have cured. Disasters that human engineers could have prevented." He moved to a display screen that showed images from across the galaxy. Refugee camps on Altair, medical ships overwhelmed with plague victims, burned-out cities on worlds caught in the expanding wars. "The difference is that now you notice the suffering because it affects species that are part of your alliance," Do-Hyun said. "For 200 years, humans tried to expand that circle of concern. We wanted to build a galaxy where everyone worked together to prevent these tragedies. We can build that now," Maldena insisted. "With humanity's help, we can create the kind of civilization you always wanted." Do-Hyun shook his head slowly. "No, we cannot. Because you do not want us as partners. You want us as solutions to your problems. You want us to come back and fix everything while you continue making the same mistakes that created these crises." Through the window, they could see the first human ships beginning to power up their Exodus drives. Brilliant blue flames stretched into space as the great generation ships prepared for their final journey. "We are not your cleanup crew," Do-Hyun said firmly. "We are not your backup plan. We are not your emergency solution. We are human beings who deserve to be valued as partners, not just used as tools." Maldena made one final attempt. "What if we changed?" What if we gave humanity complete authority over crisis management? What if we restructured the entire council to prevent these problems? Then you would be asking us to run your civilization. For you, Do-hyun replied. And that would not be partnership either. That would just be a different kind of dependency. He walked to the door, signaling that the meeting was over. Vice Chair Moldena, I am sorry for the suffering in the galaxy. Truly I am. But humanity tried for 2 centuries to build something better with you. We offered our knowledge, our skills, our friendship. Most of you ignored us until you needed us. The final ships in the human fleet were moving toward the departure point. Soon they would be gone forever. We are not angry, Do-hyun said as he led Moldena back to her ship. We are not seeking revenge. We simply choose to go somewhere else and build something better. As Moldena's ship undocked from the way station, she watched through the viewports as the human fleet formed up for departure. Thousands of ships carrying the hopes and dreams of an entire species, moving together toward the edge of the galaxy. Do-hyun's final words echoed in her mind as the human fleet disappeared into the cosmic darkness. We tried to be partners. Now we will be pioneers. The journey back to Council space took 3 weeks. When Moldena arrived, she found a galaxy that had deteriorated even further. The plague death toll had reached 75 million. 2 more regional conflicts had erupted. The Council's emergency government was barely functioning. Chairman Torval met her at the spaceport, his expression desperate with hope. What did they say? When will they return? Moldena could barely speak. They are not coming back. The words fell like stones into still water, creating ripples of despair that spread throughout Council space. The last hope was gone. The galaxy would have to face its future alone. In the void between galaxies, the human fleet continued its journey toward the Magellanic Clouds. Behind them, a galaxy learned too late that some departures are permanent and some mistakes cannot be undone. On the generation ship New Soul, Dr. Haiwan Song was writing in her journal. Her grandmother had kept a journal during the early days of humanity's participation in galactic civilization. Now Haiwan was documenting the end of that era. She wrote, "Sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is walk away quietly and let others discover what they have lost." The transmission was broadcast on all frequencies as the human fleet crossed into intergalactic space, not as a final insult,